Well, I'm still behind on movie reviews for 2018, so let's try to get past two more movies for my reviews, and let's start off with Proud Mary. So, Proud Mary is an action film that almost looked like it could be a blaxploitation film, but it really isn't. It stars Taraji P. Henson, who's been in plenty of movies, one of them being Hidden Figures. She was also in Person of Interest for a few seasons. She was a main character in that. Well, one of the main characters. And now in Proud Mary, she stars as our title character, Mary, who happens to be a hit woman. A hit woman for a secret underground crime organization. Well, at the beginning of the film, she is forced to kill a person who turns out he had a son. Not wanting to kill kids and not killing the son, a year later she finds this person living on the streets of Boston in some affiliation with other gangs, and she decides to look after the boy. Unfortunately, that means killing off someone important in another gang, which causes a gang war. And now Mary has to find a way to cover her tracks, keep the kid a secret from her own gang, and try to solve this gang war so that she comes out on top, and hopefully she can get out of this situation and get out of the gang completely, because she doesn't really want to be a hit woman. Now, does this movie sound like a few other movies to you? Most likely it does, because the one that it sounds the most to me like is Leon the Professional. When I saw this movie 2 weeks ago, I wasn't really looking forward to it and didn't think that it would be all that good. Turns out I did have a fun time and I did ultimately like it. Let's talk about the good things first. Yes, this movie borrows a lot, very heavily, from many other movies, and so many other movies that have done this sort of thing better, with the gang wars and someone getting caught up in the middle of it, also a hit woman or a hit man trying to take care of a kid and trying to keep that kid safe. A lot of it does feel like it's been done before and has been done better, but this movie does it solid enough that I understood the drama and liked the drama in it, and thought that, hey, it's hitting a lot of similar notes, but there's similar notes that I like. And I know there's a lot of generic action movie cliches that are borrowed in this movie as well, that only the most active viewer of action films will admire and not get annoyed with. As far as acting goes, I think most people did a solid job. Taraji P. Henson was really good as our main character Mary, this hit woman, and when it came to the action scenes, she was very cold and very brutal, and I thought she did a really good job at it. I like the kid in this movie as well, which I won't say the name because I know I'm going to mispronounce it because it is a long name. But I thought he did a good job as well. And another surprise, which I kind of saw him in the trailer for a brief moment and thought it was him, and it is him. Danny Glover's in this movie as the head of the the gang or mafia, whatever you want to call it, the one that is running, that Mary's in. He's the one running it, and I thought he did a really good job at this character. There's not much going for this character, but it's the kind of character where it sets it up where he's older and maybe he's gone soft in his old age and he's allowing this other gang to take advantage of him, and his son is mad about that because he wants to run it and stuff. But then you realize throughout the movie that Danny Glover's character is a very manipulative person and very shady and very sneaky, and there's something really great about his character and his villainry. Unfortunately, he's not the main villain of the film, and he gets taken care of pretty quickly. Well, before the last act of the movie, at least. There was a bunch of other people I thought did a pretty solid job, but there was one performance that was a little disappointing and I didn't think was all that good, but I'll talk about that in the bad. Now, this is an action movie, so obviously action is going to play a heavy role on whether you like the film or not, and there is 3 action scenes in this movie, and they progressively get better as the movie goes along. And honestly, I liked all 3 action sequences in the film. The first one's really quick. Second one is two characters taking out a whole gang, which is really awesome. It almost feels a little John Woo-ish, like a John Woo movie without the karate and without the doves or some of the cliches of a John Woo film, but kind of feel like it in a way. But then it gets to the last action scene of the movie, which is easily the best part of the film. And I have to admit, I dug it. It was a little cheesy with the fact that they used the Proud Mary song for that last action sequence, which they use in the trailer. And you see a lot of that action sequence within the trailer. But I can look over that because, for the most part, it's edited in a way, shot in a way that isn't quite John Wick style, obviously. Nothing, John Wick, Atomic Blonde, The Raid, those kind of films are in a whole nother level. But there is a lot of things that reminded me of John Wick with how the camera moved, how the editing was, how it wasn't shaky cam, how it wasn't chopped to bits, and how she does a lot of headshots and a lot of brutal kills, and she takes no nonsense and just shoots the hell out of people. There's something simplistic and brutal about John Wick's action that is similar to Proud Mary at the end of the movie. Again, you could say it's a cheap knockoff of John Wick, which I can understand, but just having that little element there makes it a far better action movie and a far better action scene than some other generic action films out there. Now honestly, when it comes to the bad about this film, there isn't a lot much to be said. There was one performance, one of the major characters, that I didn't find all that intimidating, and I didn't find the performance all that good, which ultimately becomes the main villain of the film by the end of it. That is Danny Glover's son in this movie, played by Billy Brown. But I don't know if it was the performance or there just wasn't that much to this character. They tried to add something, some sort of complexity with the fact that him and Mary were together at one point, but they're not anymore. And they do have him taking over the business after, well, Danny Glover's character gets what's coming to him. And as far as the good, great action sequence at the end of the film is, it does lead to a very anticlimactic moment where it just peters out. So I guess if I were to point any sort of disappointing performances in this movie, I would unfortunately have to say Billy Brown as the main villain. Another scene that just made me sort of question, like, how is this possible, and just sort of in a nitpicky way, there was a torture scene in the movie, and there was a point where this torture scene is happening because our bad guys need to get information from a bad guy from the other gang, and so Billy Brown's character, who's Danny Glover's son in the movie, is taking care of it and torturing him by putting a plastic bag over his head, taping it around his neck so he can't breathe, and then shooting nails into his leg. And all the while I'm thinking, okay, shouldn't he be dead by now as he's trying to breathe in this plastic bag? And it goes on for a while, and then you learn that he's been at it for a couple hours, and I'm just thinking, okay, was that bag over his head the whole time? Because you'd think he would suffocate by now. There was something about that scene where I'm like, okay, I get where you're going, I get you're trying to be this crazy torturous scene as cheaply as possible, but there's just something about that bag that just made it comical to me because it seemed like ridiculously over the top, and the character probably would be dead by the time they were shooting nails into his leg. I guess other bads could be that there isn't really much new to this movie that is brought to other action films. There's plenty of things that it borrows from other action films and other movies, other better movies, but at the same time, I didn't mind it that much, but I can understand people not liking it because of those things. Ultimately, I still like the movie, and I'm going to have to give Proud Mary 3 stars. Now, ultimately, my score does round up to 3 stars, so it's a little less than 3 stars. And this movie, to most people, is probably going to feel like a 2 out of 5, or if you go by 10 rating, then a 4 out of 10 for you. This is that kind of movie, but ultimately, I did like it. I have to give it 3. And that's what I thought about Proud Mary. So, did you see Proud Mary? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please check out my other movie reviews and movie countdowns of previous years. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.